Hello, my name is Yuanxi, a postdoc fellow at Johns Hopkins. Now, I'm presenting our study titled Assessment of Research Waste in the Randomized Clinical Trials Conducted in Mainland China, a cross-sectional study. This figure shows the trend of gross domestic expenditure by country. The blue line represents China. The gross domestic expenditure in China has been growing rapidly. In 2017, it was ranked second only to the United States. Correspondingly, the number of scientific publications from China has been surging. This figure shows the trend of scientific publications by country. The purple line represents China. In 2016, China became the largest producer of scientific publications. However, it was suspected that the quality of some research activities was questionable. The resources invested in these research activities may have been wasted. So, in this study, we assessed potential research waste in randomized trials conducted in China. Research waste may occur at 4 successive stages: the choice of research questions, the quality of research design and methods, the adequacy of publication practices, and the quality of reports of research. In this study, we focused on 3 stages. At the stage of the choice of research questions, we assessed the representation of disease burden by RCTs from China. At the stage of publication practices, we assessed their reporting quality. At the stage of the research design and methods, we assessed their risk of bias. Eligible studies were RCTs that were conducted in hospitals or primary care facilities, assessing interventions on participants rather than caregivers, with all the authors affiliated to organizations in the China mainland and were published in 2019. Among all eligible RCTs from bibliographic databases, we took a 10% random sample to assess the representation of disease burden. Then we took a 1% random sample to assess the reporting quality and risk of bias. To assess the representation of disease burden, we used the disability-adjusted life years as the indicator for disease burden. DALY was extracted from the global burden of disease tool. We mapped each RCT to a disease category defined by the tool and assessed the association between the number of RCTs and DALY. We assessed the reporting quality of the following items: allocation sequence generation, allocation concealment, masking, missing values, sample size estimation, designation of primary outcome, and primary analysis method. Based on the Cochrane risk of bias tool, we assessed two potential biases. The bias arising from the randomization process and the bias due to deviations from intended interventions. We estimated that in 2019, 111,363 RCTs from China were published. These RCTs could be divided into 4 quarters according to the experimental interventions: chemical or biological, nursing, procedure or surgery, and Chinese medicine. Only 0.6% of RCTs from China reported registration. 18% reported funding sources, and 4% reported conflict of interest. Less than half reported ethics review, and less than 60% reported informed consent. We were able to map 80% of RCTs to 146 disease categories. We found a moderate correlation between daily and the number of RCTs. The Spearman correlation coefficient was 0.66. We found substantial mismatch between disease burden and the number of RCTs. For example, more than a third of RCTs assessed these 10 disease categories, which only represented 7% of Delhi. This means too many RCTs have been conducted on disease categories that had less impact on people's health. On the contrary, only 22% of RCTs assessed these 10 disease categories, which represented almost half of Delhi. This means too few RCTs have been conducted on disease categories that had more impact on people's health. The reporting quality of RCTs was very low. Only 52% reported sequence generation. 1.4% reported allocation concealment. 2.1% reported masking. 1.2% reported sample size estimation. 1.1% reported designation of primary outcome, and only 2% reported sequence generation, allocation concealment, and masking simultaneously. More than 93% of RCTs were rated at some concerns for the bias arising from the randomization process. And almost all of them were rated at a high risk of bias for the bias due to deviations from intended interventions. Our study shows that the RCTs from China suffered from mismatch with disease burden, low reporting quality, and high risk bias. The resources invested in most RCTs from China have been wasted. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.